Farting in the mic. Say, do I am Iron Man. All right, everyone. Here we are. Pantera, Part 2. Welcome to Cranked and Ranked, the podcast you're listening to. You should know what this is because we did a Part 1 of Pantera. Why would you be listening to Part 2? That's out of order.
Start with 2, man.
Yeah.
Fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah. Although this could end up being like the Empire Strikes Back of Pantera episodes, where it's a much more interesting and ends on a really sad note. Actually, it probably will. This will be the Empire Strikes Back of Pantera podcast ranking episodes called Cranked and Ranked. Anyway, welcome. As usual, old head, me, him, Eddie Sparxx.
That's me.
That was a pretty no nonsense intro right there.
That was business.
But you know what? It makes sense because we're talking about a pretty no nonsense band. Like they didn't fuck around. And
I mean, apart from the home videos, but those who work hard play hard.
You're right. There was a lot of fucking around in all of those videos. Those like I love watching all three of those home videos. I have all three of the VHSs, and they're just fucking fun as hell. But I have to admit that the last one, the 3 Watch It Go, like that one is so long it gets exhausting. Where I'm just like, I don't want to be on tour with you guys anymore. This is too much. I don't need to get to know every single crew member and some weird fucking gross thing they all do. I don't need that. Thank you. But other than that,
when was that one? Was that was that around Far Beyond Driven or Great Southern Trendkill?
It's both. So because they didn't put out a home video around the time of Far Beyond Driven, and so once they got to Great Southern Trendkill, they did like a combo, which is why it's so long. Shit. Like it's just all this footage that my favorite is Vulgar Videos, because that's the one where they're like on tour with Skid Row and stuff like that, and it's to me that's the perfect one because it's got all the debauchery and the craziness and everything, but it's not really long. And it's got, some classic music videos in it too. Well, I guess they all three do, but we're not ranking those. But if I didn't, my number 1 would be Vulgar Videos. Nice. So, or Vulgar Video, I think is just what it's called without an S on the end. Some big Pantera fan is going to be like, there's no S at the end of that title. There are, I've noticed that there are a few pretty big Pantera fans that kind of chimed in on our last episode. I do have to point out one, because he's been a long time listener / viewer. He goes by Integrity 101, and he always does pretty lengthy responses. And the thing that I like about him is that even if it's something where he clearly doesn't agree with us on it, it's always very thoughtful and I don't know, interesting what he has to say. It's not just like, fuck you, you're morons, and here's why.
true peanut butter platypus right there.
Yeah. Although he did send us some interesting thoughts, which I enjoyed reading. But the one I do have to say, I have a bone to pick with him because he single-handedly ruined my Dimebag Darrell experience, because his first thing was, didn't you know that there's another album that Dimebag did? And I'm like, I did not know this. And so he listed it. I literally had never heard of it before. And I only got through half of one song, and I'm like, this fucking ruined my world. It's just because it's like, I'm sure a lot of people like it. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't even remember what the name of it was because I literally went, no. It was that thing where I just shut the door, like there was a huge beast there and went, nope, and I'm running the other way.
I did see the comment, but I didn't follow up on it. I was a little busy at the time, but
so apparently in the late 90s and early 2000s, all of the Pantera guys except for Phil randomly did recordings with a country music artist called David Allan Coe. And
right. Oh yeah.
And whatever the album is, like, here's the thing. I'm going to be honest because I know that it's unfair. It's unfair to judge things like this, but you have to know where I'm coming from. In my opinion, in my brain and in my life, there is no such thing as good country music. There is bearable country music. I would, because people would go like, what about Johnny Cash? Bearable. Some of his shit downright awful, but a lot of it bearable. I'm gonna give him that. But that's just my opinion. So when you take a country music artist and put it onto some sort of leftover Pantera riffs and stuff, I'm just like, why does this have to be a thing? But anyway, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was kind of brought up on country, but I'm from Britain, so I'm kind of removed from it at the same time. You being from Texas, a very, it's the South, it's the south of America, not South America, obviously.
South in America, yeah.
South in, yeah. I can see how kind of like you could get burnt out on it, and like for me, the big thing is like I love American hip hop. Right, I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Right. Pretty much any like grime or drill stuff. My ears have the same thing where it's like, nope, boom. I'm sure the artists are great guys, but it's like my ears tell me that is the soundtrack to being a 12-year-old kid at the back of the bus, obnoxiously blasting it out of his shitty phone speaker with all his other 12 mates who all have the exact same tracksuit on, being pricks to everyone else on the bus. Like, that's just my experience with that genre is completely tarred.
Yeah.
And I can see where you're coming from.
My country music experience is probably 25% that, where just people involved are douchebags and I want nothing to do with it. But if that were the case, I also wouldn't listen to metal. So that's not where I'm going.
Yeah, I guess so.
But with country music, it's just the fact that I grew up in the time where pop country became the first time it was ever happening, with like Kenny Rogers and Alabama and all these 80s artists that were doing country music, but it was technically pop songs. Which is funny because people will be like, new country is just pop music. I'm like, country has been pop music for 40 years.
Yeah.
So get off that shit. Yeah. Anyway, I just don't like it at all. And so you put the stuff that I heard from that album sounded so awkward that I'm just like, oh, no, I can't even do it. But I guess I'm glad that I know about it now, but it is one of those things. It was like I was like, oh, this is the Great Southern Buzzkill is what this is. But anyway, but thank you, Integrity 101, for always being there with like some really thoughtful comments. Like I like that. Like I like, if you're gonna write something really long, like give me some meat, give me something to sink my teeth into, and he always does. So that being said, we'll jump into this second half of the Pantera album ranking, which, if you for some reason didn't listen to the first part, we're also including the Damage Plan album New Found Power, to even it out to 10 albums. Last time we talked about a lot of the 80s Pantera. There will still be some more today, so we're mixing it up, but it's been an interesting ranking so far. It's been really weird for me because I found that when it's music that I know really well, I get really like intricate in my picking it apart, and I start trying to look at things from all these different angles and go, come on, dude, you've heard this album 1,000 times and you love it, but is it really better than this other one and all this other stuff? And so my top three literally like kept sort of shifting a little bit, to the point where now the top two, I'm just like, it's almost like a top two that's like really close layered together, where they're almost just fused next to each other. And I'm like, all right, that's fine. That's how it's gonna have to go.
I was gonna say as well, just before we go into it, have you ever had where like an album you love, but you don't listen to it for like years, for like circumstances, you were just into other stuff, right? And eventually you come back around to it and you're like, ah, like 8 years ago I blasted that nonstop, and you go back to it and you get to like almost hear it for the first time again.
Yeah.
I had that a few times with this ranking,
Oh, okay.
especially one in particular where I was like, this is still as fucking awesome as the day I first heard it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
There are some albums that I've done that with, and a lot of them, especially the shit that I was listening to late '90s, early 2000s. I'll go back to that and go, "Oh, this was an album I listened to a whole bunch," and I'll listen to it and go, "Oh man, I must have been depressed, or something was fucking wrong with me." But yeah, but in the case of these albums, aside from the Damage Plan album, the Damage Plan album I'd only heard a couple times prior to this, and honestly, I'd never really given it a fair shot. I have to say, because like I liked it, but it became that sort of thing where it's like, if I want something that those dudes did, I'm gonna go for something Pantera. So that album just sort of just went, kind of fell by the wayside. But everything else in this episode we're talking about, I've heard a lot over the past 30 years or however long it's been. So yeah, let's and that without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Well, this is going to be our top 5. So as usual, throwing it to Mr. Eddie Sparxx for his number 5 Pantera album.
Nice. So my number 5 Pantera album is I Am the Night.
Oh man, this was my dead last album.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing. This album to me is the most like 80s indulgent it got for them.
It's the best. It's the best Def Leppard Pantera album ever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Like even down to the fact that I'm going to bring this up anyway. You get Hot and Heavy. What a killer opening song. Like that is awesome. Hot and Heavy, like all of that. That is so good. But the thing that completes the whole sonic landscape for me on this album is the fact that Vinnie Paul, right, a guy known for his, big, huge drums on his kit, he's not a flashy player. He just hits them fucking hard and he plays fast, sometimes technical, but usually just really groovy parts, right? But this motherfucker, it's the mid 80s. Fuck it. I'm going to put these hexagonal sample pads on my kit instead and do the do shit. And I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah.
That sound, those samples, they sound fucking cool.
I have to agree. Like all of that drum sound, like it wouldn't work with any music, but yeah, it is a drum sound that for some reason I hear it now and I go, that's pretty cool actually, in a throwback kind of way.
It's not trying to sound, it's not like a bad sample of a drum. It's a completely different noise, It's
the drum equivalent of in the 80s whenever there'd be punch sound effects and people hitting the ground. It was always the same sound.
Yeah.
It was always the same sounds. And they were the most like, I was like, wait, how come all of those punches sound exactly the same in this huge fight that's happening?
But it's just like, even down, now I know I've mentioned this actually recently in another episode, but I was just saying, it's so cool to like be listening to like a metal song only for like a Miami Vice tom fill to just show up out of fucking nowhere. Like it's just like like okay, and it's the way they're panned as well. It's like, oh, hello, what are you doing here? But yeah, I love it. I Am the Night, evil laugh, proggy evil riff, explosion samples, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Onward we rock. Oi! Fucking love that. D star, G star, T star, T star, M. Daryl Goes to the Movies. Is this insane solo spot thing. It's really cool. Crazy good playing. I mean, had he just hit his 20s here, or
No,
was he still a
no.
teenager?
He was a teenager all through those first 4 albums. Because you got to remember, I think he was 16 on the first album, so he would have been 17 here.
Shit. Damn, dude. Like,
oh yeah,
absolutely
no, the
insane.
dude ruled probably out of the womb.
Yeah.
You know,
Just came out of the womb with a Dean ML.
yeah.
And his mother's like, what the fuck? I had to pass this thing? It's just got like 2 big ass legs on it. But yeah, Daughters of the Queen. It's a pretty cool track. Down Below is just kick ass speed metal. Come On Eyes. Instant unconscious headbanging moment. That riff is fucking rad. I just caught myself. It wasn't even like a half like head bob. It was like a
Yeah.
I like that. But here's the thing, like there was like this rapid vocal evolution of Terry Glaze.
Yeah.
Right, where it's like he doesn't sound very confident at all on Metal Magic. And then all of a sudden he sounds like Joe Elliott on Projects in the Jungle. And now here he has moments where he sounds like Udo Dirkschneider from Accept with like that really gravelly AC/DC on roids sort of thing.
You are right. He did move forward from the Joe Elliott thing on this one. Like it's not.
He's going for more of this sort of thing.
It's more leaning towards Rob Halford or that area of vocals and not so much Joe Elliott. But yeah,
it's so funny because then on the following album, Phil just sounded like an American Rob Halford.
Yeah. I'm sure that's what they wanted, though. They're writing this music, and that the vocals, that was kind of like, well, this fits it. This fits what we're doing, you know. Yeah. So go for it.
Oh, man, Valhalla is like another super 80s speed metal song. Forever Tonight. I was in love with that song the moment the third bar had started, man. Holy shit. This album to me really indulges that, you know, shameless mid 80s badassery where it's like you'll get. I'm so tired of like hearing people say, "Oh, 80s drum sounds need to fucking die because they sound stupid and dated." It's like, dude, everything sounds dated at some point. You know, if you listen to something from, you know, people have like super dead sounding drum samples to make stuff sound like it's from the 70s, and nobody complains about that. It's like there's
or nowadays with super overly compressed drums that don't even sound like drums. They just sound like clicky. Like I constantly hear new metal, but not new metal, but new metal bands. And I swear to God, I almost feel like I want to like put together a thing where I do like an impression of modern metal. And it's literally going to be me with a desk fan. And then I'm going to put a pencil into the fan and have it go, and then I'm going to go, ooh. And I'm like, that's literally, it's because it's just clicking and growling. Sometimes you can't even make out the fucking guitar shit because it's produced so badly. But I mean, whatever. I've gotten so used to it. I've gotten to the point now where I have to resign myself to the fact that I'm just not a guy that likes new music. I like some of it, but it seems like 98% of the time something new will come out and I'll go, this is absolutely nothing for me. And it's that point. Everybody reaches that point in their life. And I think I've kind of gotten there a little bit.
Yeah. But with that, you know, there's also like a shit ton of stuff that's, you know, I'm always very envious of people my age who are, you know, kind of with it and know what's happening. Yeah. You know, I used to be a lot more like it. Back when I used to read Kerrang magazine in my early teens, because I would buy it every week, and like I would always find myself drawn to the older bands that would be in there, because that was just my taste. But I did see things and hear things. If an article caught my eye on a band I didn't really know about, but something outrageous had happened, I'd read it and I'd be like, oh wow. But I don't know. I've forgotten how it feels to have kind of a finger on the pulse. I will say though, I've heard some stuff coming out, and there's a lot of really cool grungy stuff, like grunge meets metal stuff that's happening. And there's a playlist called "Smells Like Stream Spirit" on Spotify. Yeah, and a few of the band members in the band I'm in, like, were telling me
he's in a band, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first.
I'm in a band. I just got 10 times hotter, didn't I?
Yeah. If that were even possible, come on, man.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, it's I'm starting to hear a little bit of a grunge renaissance, and I am 100% behind it.
I'd be down with it if something different happens with it and it's a different sound, because there are some of those bands that I like, but then there's a lot of those bands too that like people are saying, oh, this is grunge, but it's literally just alternative rock. Like I'm like, you not get what the difference is there, but that's okay. It's whatever. Some of it's good, some of it's not. But I think that the frustrating thing is I actively look for new music every week. I go listen to in the rock and metal sections on my streaming services. I go and listen to a little bit of all sorts of shit. And that's never going to end. I think I'm probably going to be, on my deathbed in the hospital. I'm still going to be like, new music came out today. I just want to check and make sure if something's going to do it for me. Nope, still doesn't.
I tell you what, I'm going to do a little bit of a shout out here to a band I'd been recommended, and there's a band called Dark Sun, and they have a song called Trapped in the Dark off of an album called Spine, which came out.
Wow, everything about that. So the album title sounds very 90s. Spine.
Yeah, it's killer stuff, man. And there's another one called I think Dead Blonde Stars or something like that. And they're a little
promising, but
they're actually, they've got a very Chris Cornell vibe to them, but yeah.
Cool. I'll have to take a look at them, which is totally unrelated to what we're talking about. Not only are we doing a Pantera episode, but we're also doing a glammy Pantera, or glam-ish Pantera. Let's move. So it's all like, let's talk about grunge.
You could argue like there's elements of Pantera's image that were kind of grungy at the at the time.
That's true. That's true. There was flannel involved.
Yeah. That their image is my image, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I Am the Night, really cool album.
Yeah.
I like it. Do over to you.
Bam. I'm gonna go all the way to the other end. My number 5 is the Damage Plan album, New Found Power from 2004. So I have a lot of gripes about this album, but I think it ended up here for me because I listened to it again. I was like, this is pretty cool. And then when I went through and decided to do all the Pantera albums like in order, once again, when I got to this, I went, because last time I complained a lot about how I didn't really like Reinventing the Steel. Well, I liked it, but I didn't. Musically speaking, I felt like it was a step back. And then Phil's vocals, I also don't like what he did. I didn't like the vocal phrasing he decided on, and his just everything about it. I was just like, it's not as interesting, and it didn't do it for me. Moving on to New Found Power, a gripe that some people could have is that occasionally the vocalist, Patrick Lachman, sometimes he does sound like he's doing a bit of a Phil Anselmo impression, which those are the times I go, but then again, you got to get it up to the point that from that moment on, from the early 2000s on, there's about 1,000 metal singers who are all doing Phil Anselmo impressions. So whatever, I'm going to let him pass there. I'll get my biggest gripe about the album out of the way though, because I like this album. But the biggest thing I have, once again, I can't blame it on this album, because this is a thing that started to happen in all metal. Still happens today, but definitely was happening a lot late 90s, early 2000s, where all of the lyrics, like literally the first song on this album is called Wake Up, and the chorus is like, you think that you're better than me? You think that you're better than me? And I'm like, that's literally what metal was for like 10 years. It was dudes going like, you think that you're better than me? And I'm just like, oh God, shut the fuck up, dude.
Dad, take your meds, please.
There's a whole lot of that on this album, but there was a whole lot of that on Pantera, and a lot of, but it wasn't so blatant. Like Phil never said, you think that you're better than me? And that's just shitty lyric writing, first off. But also it just gets really obnoxious, because I'm just like, dude, come on, grow the fuck up. The song should be called Grow Up, and somebody should have rewritten the lyrics. Anyway, but that aside, those kind of cringy lyrics throughout this is kind of my only really big gripe about it, because because really, like his actual vocals, especially as the album moves on, he gets way more dynamic in what he does.
Yeah.
And he's actually complements the music really well. Like his voice actually, to me, is more enjoyable than Phil's was on the last two Pantera albums. So I'm cool with that. And I like the fact that if you really like listen to this album, aside from a few things here and there, it's musically a little bit different from Pantera. Like it's almost like they moved into this sort of, and I guess you could say it's very early 2000s, where it's like brutal, but also strangely radio ready at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like and I kind of like that because I like a good hook. And I like, I like a song that has a memorable thing that gets stuck in my head. But at the same time, if you have a badass riff in that also, that makes a pretty damn good song to me.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's that era. It's kind of like, now, hear me out. It's kind of the Nickelback era where everybody's like, we can do rock and we can do hard rock, but it has to be a hit. So it's like, okay, we're going to basically do a pop song, deconstruct it and rebuild it with a metal, metal build.
I'm even though I'm not a fan, I'm gonna object to you using Nickelback as the reference, because at least Nickelback were honest enough to be like, look, we're not hiding behind trying to be tough. We're doing heavy radio ready songs. Other bands, some bands that are really, really fucking popular are still like being like, we're brutal. But at the same time, they have like, I'm going to sing this part now. And I'm just like, go fuck yourself at that part.
You're not fucking tough if you turn around and go, I'm really tough. I'm really brutal. My girlfriend broke up with me. Like
that was... Man, now that you mentioned that, that's something that somebody should do, like a complete 180. Instead of just having elements of metal and like emo, have it to where it completely transforms. Where one half of the song is literally about Satan, and then the chorus is literally like, "You broke my heart," and like that needs to be done. That would be a fucking huge hit with the young people. And then eventually you'd find out that all of the band were sexual predators, and then they would break up. Because that's what's happening with all this music. What is it? Metalcore, any of those bands. Like it's almost like just wait a little bit. One of them is going to be a pedophile. Okay.
If you had the side fringe, FBI is coming after you, bro. If you got up on stage with the swoop, they're on to you. Chuck that hard drive in the lake, dude.
There are some great bands in that. I'm not gonna be a dick, but seriously. Anyway,
not all bands.
There were some good ones, right? But yeah, back to Newfound Power. Like it, so it does have a lot of that early 2000s kind of stuff, but done way better because you got the riff writing of Dimebag, which honestly, there are amazing riffs on Reinventing the Steel, but something happens on Damage Plan where it's almost like he's not just relying on it being a riff. It'll just be a chord progression, and then the way it's played, I'm like, that's really great. Like it's almost like he tried to be a little less flashy on this, and I think it works really well. And it's kind of a shame that this was the only one, because I feel like there's a lot of promise here in this album that we didn't get to fully realize, which, who knows what their fucking second album could have been like. It could have been a fucking game changer again. You never know. But so I guess it's a little bittersweet for me because I'm realizing this album's really good, but I'm like, well, that was all she wrote, because it's the last thing that Dimebag did. Because I mean, all the stuff on said country album from earlier, or country metal album from earlier, that was all recorded earlier and released after he died. So who knows if he would have I'm gonna pretend in my head that Dimebag would not have signed off on that. He would have been like, look, David Allan Coe, we had some laughs, but I was really drunk. Anyway, sorry, guys, not to harp on that again. Anyway, so So like I said, this album has a lot of dynamics to it, which I really like. And it's one of those albums that I think the songs actually get better later on the album, which is odd for early 2000s stuff. And it's got a great energy. But the reason I ended up putting this at number 5 is because I feel like it was a step back in a more interesting direction for what like the Abbott brothers were doing.
Yeah.
The only one thing I'm going to add to Damage Plan is it is, even though it's not a double album, it is a contender for Slashed and Mashed, because as I'm going through the album, I go, this is really fucking long. And if you took out like maybe 5 songs, this would be a fucking killer album. Like you could whittle it down to be an amazing record. But it falls into that category of like, we got 80 minutes to fill, so let's do it, you know?
Still during that like kind of mid to late 90s, early 2000s CD era where like it was quantity over quality.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really think there's necessarily any filler in this album. I just think that there are definite songs that kind of block the momentum of what it could be. But yeah, I think that it's a good album, and I thought giving it the respect of being in the top 5 was worthy to me. So that's why Damage Plan goes here, number 5.
Sweet. Okay, so my number 4 is my favorite of their 80s era, Projects in the Jungle.
Nice. So this is what earlier when you brought up the other one, I was like, that's not the Def Leppard album. This is the Def Leppard album. So
yeah,
I love this one.
It's fucking killer, dude. Like All Over Tonight, legit sounds like what would have happened in an alternate timeline if Def Leppard decided to get heavier after Pyromania instead of doing Hysteria. You know, which is also the timeline where Rick Allen still has his arm.
Maybe you figured it out. That's what it is.
It's like, oh shit.
The power, like there was a car accident with Rick Allen. His arm was severed, and the power of Rick Allen's arm somehow transferred over to Vinnie Paul. And then they created this album.
Do we just crack the code? I'm about to fucking Truman
like
show this shit.
It's like that. There was a horror movie back in the day. I don't even remember what it was called. I think it was called Body Parts. And it was one where like just his arm becomes possessed and it's trying to kill him and making him do shit. I think that's what the movie was called. It was like a late 80s horror movie, but it was, I just remember awesome. Like there's scenes where it's just his arm is possessed.
That's brilliant. But like, honestly, All Over Tonight, right out of the gate, what a strong song. Mm-hmm. The solo in that, like even the riff leading up to the solo blows my mind, because I'm like, what the fuck are you even playing there? Because he's like, like that bit there.
Yeah.
How does a human's hand do that? But like,
I mean, so it's like that's when you know that you're like God. No, a fan of the guitar virtuoso, because like that little thing that you're describing, when it comes to songwriting, it has fuck all to do with the song itself. But for people like us, we go, oh, do that shit again.
It's like, hey, I love when something is so shamelessly, ridiculously hard to play that it is genuinely impressive, right? There are guitarists out there that will like, you know, do arpeggios one-handed and take like a sip of beer. And I'm like, yeah, but I've seen it done.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden I hear something like that and I think, what even is that? What scale is that?
Yeah.
What the fuck just happened there? That was like 80 notes in the span of like 2 drum hits.
Speaking of, I don't know why that all of a sudden this popped in my head, but I just, speaking of that, I just started watching the new season of Stranger Things. which is fucking awesome, by the way. I don't know if you're a fan of that show or not, but man, it is.
I'm due a major catch up. I've watched the first season, but yeah.
But in this season, it takes place in 1986, and even though this song is incorrect year wise to be included, they include "Do You Want to Play" by Extreme.
Yeah.
In one point, but it's very fitting because they're actually going around asking people if they want to play Dungeons and Dragons while that song is playing. But every time that song comes on, I always go, God damn it, Nuno. It's like there's so much stuff in that song where I go, what the fuck is he even doing?
Yeah. Like all of those like things happening in that solo, I think, bruh.
Yeah. But it just reminded me of that because it's one of those things that I think there are some people that would hear a song like that and go, that's unnecessary. And then I hear it and go, no, you can't do that song any other way than that. Like that's literally how it's supposed to go.
It's like people who turn around and say, oh, shred has no feel. I'd rather hear David Gilmour play two notes and break my heart than hear Joe Satriani. Like David Gilmour is not playing shred music.
But here's the thing. That's a good comparison because the solos that David Gilmour would do and those type of solos, I love them. Yeah. But wouldn't it be better if it's literally just like a I mean
that was always my argument. I was like, right, listen to which Whitesnake solo is it that I always think of where it starts off like really soulful and then goes absolutely ripping, but it escalates the song. It's like to turn around and say it has no feel, right, is just wrong. It has a feel. It's just an intense feeling. Yeah,
I think that the problem is that really great guitar players that do kind of shreddy stuff, they get fucked over by guitar players. While I love him, Vinnie Vincent, where it's literally just I don't even know if he's even bothering to know what notes he's hitting. He's just going,
that's just.
And it's like
I practice scales for 12 straight hours every day of my teen years.
Like the Vinnie Vincent Invasion albums, at times certain songs are so exhausting. I'm just like, did that solo need? Because that is one of those times where I go, okay, that's unnecessary. Take a step back, dial it back just a little bit.
That's kind of why they, and I know this is a Pantera episode, but it's kind of why Kiss didn't really get on too well with Mark St. John compared to Bruce Kulick, because Bruce could do both. He could do feel and shred, whereas like Mark St. John, rest in peace, what a tragic story, but he couldn't replicate what he'd play. He would just like barf a solo over a riff and then be like, oh, well, I forgot it already because it was all just, note salad.
Yeah. I still don't quite, I know goddamn, this is related because Pantera were huge Kiss fans. Why, I don't understand why they didn't continue with Bruce. I think that dude fucking rules. I mean, I like the guy. What's the guy in the band now? I can never remember.
Tommy Thayer.
Yeah, Tommy. He's good, but
yeah,
I don't know. I don't think he's in the same league as Bruce, and that's just my opinion.
Tommy Thayer was in Black and Blue, wasn't he?
Some guitar player of that caliber was in Black and Blue. I don't remember.
I think it was Tommy Thayer.
You're probably right.
Yeah. That was a cool glam tangent.
Anyway, we're on a glam tangent. Did that already come up before? I know glam sandwich came up before, which is great.
Glam sandwich.
But glam tangent sounds like a great, either maybe a podcast or a band name or something, a show. Glam tangent.
Glam tangent. I like it as a band name. Yeah. Or like the front man of a glam band, just be like
Glam Tangent.
Glam Tangent.
For some reason,
I'm the bass player for Cocaine Titty. Like,
oh, I like that too. Glam Tangent. Like it rolls off my tongue, and it made me think of that scene in the Supergroup TV show where Sebastian Bach is all Savage Animal. And then Scotty was like, isn't that redundant? To be fair though, that's a pretty cool band name. Okay, so if Baz wants to start a band with me called Savage Animal, I'm on board. I can't play where the damn, I can be the rhythm guitar player and get somebody else to do the hard stuff. And I will start a band with Sebastian Bach called Savage Animal.
Nice.
Yeah. Back to Pantera.
Kazoo.
You can play the drums. Don't act like you can't play anything.
Nah, but like I have this little secret weapon. I had the. That got me on Jimmy Fallon, guys.
Yeah, that's the same. You were on Jimmy Fallon. For those of you who don't know,
I was on Jimmy Fallon. Yeah.
Although you're not going to be able to find it searching Eddie Sparxx Jimmy Fallon. I don't think that's going to come up. But look up the Jimmy Fallon kazoo boy.
Yeah, probably Jimmy Fallon kazoo boy.
I don't know why I just said kazoo boy sounded better than kazoo man. Because kazoo, why does that not work that well? Kazoo man,
kazoo man sounds like a quirky new wave band from the 80s that writes songs about science.
We keep coming up with great band names, and there are all these bands that like keep naming themselves names that have already been taken, or just putting the same two words together. Stoner Witch. That's what we're going to be called. I guess that's fucking the Melvins album title. Yeah, but there has to be a band called that, because that's literally the kind of combo that most bearded band members are going for these days.
I've got one. Boner Witch.
Oh, yeah.
Boner Witch and their new song, Haunted Cock.
That sounds like a Goblin Cock song. Did you ever heard that band, Goblin Cock?
I've seen the band Necro Goblikon.
That too.
Yeah.
Goblin Cock is like this guy who's actually was in this indie rock band called Pinback. And then he did a series of metal albums, but they're real doomy. But he sings over them. And the band is called Goblin Cock. And
it's got a good name.
It's got a lot. It's a lot of tongue in cheek type things, in it. But yeah, it's not great, but it's fun for a listen.
Fun for what it is. Yeah.
How long has it been since we mentioned Pantera? It's been at least 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's reel it in. Let's get back to projects.
Check your tangent timers, everybody.
We got lost in the jungle. So yeah,
which was that was our project in the jungle.
Yes, we podcast in the jungle. So yeah, Out for Blood. Like there's a very clear Stone Cold Crazy influence on this song. It's like, yep, I know what you're doing. Blue Light Turning Red, insane solo spot, very Van Halen. Like Fire, descending glam riffage, hell yeah. In Over My Head, this is a straight up AOR song. Holy shit, those synths. Like, I imagined myself on a contemplative night drive montage like the one in Rocky IV. Something I would never have expected to get from a Pantera song, but here we are in the weird and wild 80s world.
That's the thing. If you literally just put all the Pantera albums together and hit shuffle, you're going to get so many different vibes. That's why they're great. That's why they're a great band. You have to include all of these early albums, people. Sorry, but you have to.
Yep. Even if Vinnie Paul kind of took him to his grave because he wouldn't release them. Because he was like, that doesn't represent who we are now. And I'm like, motherfucker, like, Phil is on one of those albums. Like,
to be honest, I'm wondering if maybe Integrity 101 can chime in on this. I'm wondering if the masters of those albums even exist anymore. Because at this point, whoever's running the Pantera camp, they say yes to everything. Like Pantera beer coming out, Pantera sculptures coming out. Like everything's happening.
Pantera dildo, hell yeah.
So why wouldn't they just re-release those old albums for the, because to be fair, it's one of those things that people are gonna be like, I don't want those fucking things, but when they come out, they're gonna sell out like motherfuckers and they're gonna be expensive because everyone's gonna want them.
It's like street cred, isn't it? Like you can't admit to liking it, but you do. Like
yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are people that don't, but I mean, people like you and I that appreciate that era of music, there's no reason why we wouldn't like these albums. So
those of us that get laid.
Yep, I've been laid at least once. I have a daughter to prove it.
Very nice. I don't have a daughter, but
I've heard some stories though. So yeah,
a lot of illegitimate children. You won't get nothing from me though. But yeah, Projects in the Jungle, speed metal time, like heavy metal rules, like fist pounding the air sort of
that punk shit sucks.
Yeah,
it belongs on fucking Mars, man.
Mars, man.
This punk shit, circle of shit, and the dicks. Yeah. I almost thought
fuck Madonna too. She's a dick.
She's a dick. She's tripping Jack Daniels. That's a heavy metal parking lot, everybody. If you don't know, go watch that. It's not very long, and then your life will be better after you watch it.
It's a fascinating time capsule.
It really is.
People just living in the moment, wearing zebra jumpsuits,
living after midnight.
Oh, that's a good.
Yeah, that's a because they were there to watch Judas Priest
and Dawkins.
Oh, and Dawkins, yeah,
and Dawkins we're supporting. But yeah, so many glam tangents, my guy.
Or Dorkin.
Yeah, Dorkin.
I just remember there was a Mad magazine when I was a kid that had a fake metal magazine cover on the back of it, and then for Dawkins it just said Dorkin, and I always thought that was really funny.
Oh, I love it. Only a Heartbeat Away is gorgeously 80s harmonized riffage. Killers is back in the speed zone. Taking My Life, one last AOR kind of track to close out on. I love when they do that. It's just so different, but I can't help but love it. I love when a band who has an established style have things that are completely out of their wheelhouse, like you would think, but they did it, and it's like, actually, this is really cool to hear this from you guys. But yeah, it's a major step up in quality from the debut, and to be honest, the ideal length for an album of this genre and type, because it's 35 minutes of killer. Really, I mean, it has every type of 80s metal song, and they all fucking rule. Yeah. So yeah, pretty much. That's my favorite 80s one.
Cool.
And I would, well, we're in the 90s zone from here on out, right?
We are. Wait, what? Yeah, we are. You're right, because it looks like we're not going to have the same top three, but we may have the same top something. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But this is 4, right? My number 4 is the Great Southern Trendkill from 1996. Cool. I think I've been pretty vocal. If anyone's paid attention to my channel over the years, that this album isn't one of my favorites. In fact, to me, there's a gap in quality between this album and the other 3 I'm going to talk about. That's pretty wide when you consider the quality of the albums. That doesn't mean that this is not a great album, because it is. At the time that it came out, so I think I had already graduated high school, or I was still in my senior year of high school when this came out. I don't really remember. But the one thing that I liked about it when it came out was that all these metal bands, for the most part, all seemed to be getting soft, which I liked a lot of the music they were doing, but I was like, man, is everybody going to do this? And then Pantera answers that fucking question, note number 1 on this album. I was like, oh, no, never mind. They're still going full force. That being said, one of the downfalls of this album is the fact that some of it comes across as extreme for extremity's sake. And there's a lot of things in this album, especially when it comes to Phil Anselmo's vocals, that are literally just him trying to be extreme, and it doesn't do anything to serve the song. Because the more that I listen to this album over the years, the more that I will hear, especially comparing it, listening to it right in a fucking row with all of their other stuff, you hear a riff and you go, oh, something really cool could go over here, but it's not. They're just more stuff over it. And I'm just like, okay. And I understand that that's what they were going for. It was like a statement. of like, we're going to be extreme. But honestly, if that was your statement, would you have put like 2 or 3 acoustic songs on the album too? No. So that goes out the window immediately. But that being said, musically speaking, Great Southern Trendkill, amazing. Like and my only problem with it is that it feels a little bit uneven, because there are songs that are fucking totally badass, and then other songs I'm just like, this is good, it's got good parts in it, but overall it's not anything that blows me away. And there's a lot of albums I felt that way back in the day, and a lot of them have grown on me. This one hasn't grown on me at all. If anything, especially when it comes to Phil's vocals, it's become more annoying to listen to this album, because I'm so done with him on this album. Mostly because of all the double tracking and the repetitive vocals, where why do you need the same word recorded 4 or 5 different times to play right after? I'm just like, get over your fucking self, dude. And I know that like that you can look at the producer or engineer for that as well. They had to make that decision to do those things. But especially when at this point, like I made reference to last time, it becomes a thing with somebody just seeming like they're angry, but they don't really know why they're angry. They're angry because somebody said something about them they don't like, or they're angry because they don't like the music scene now. And it's just like, it's really empty angriness on, starting here. And I'm just like, and not all of it, but there's enough on there that it leads to that thing I was talking about, where it's just the shouty vocals. What are you mad about? I don't really know. Here's a list of things I could be angry about, so I'm going to pick one of those and write a song about it. And so it drags the album down. Not to harp on Phil, but I have to in this case, because I feel like the album could have been way better. So I don't even know where to go from there. I feel like I've already hit all these points. I wrote down notes and like, I've thought about this album so much for, 25, 27 years, however long it's been, that I'm just like, all right, I kind of already know how I feel about it. But yeah, I just feel like really every time I listen to this album, I go, man, there's a lot of really good shit on here, but when the album ends, I go, it really sounds like a band that needs a little bit of a break. Like maybe they were going too hard at it. And here's the thing. I know that there are people watching this right now or listening that this is their number one Pantera album. Could even be yours. I don't know. But I have to be completely honest when I go, I don't fucking understand that at all. Like unless you are just a fan of extreme for extremity's sake. If you are the person that likes every extreme metal album that comes out, as long as it doesn't matter if it's the same shit over and over again, as long as it's still blast beats and guttural vocals and all that shit, then I get it. But it's this album has so much more going on it.
Yeah.
That could have been way better. So that's kind of where I fall with this, is I go, you can't listen to Cowboys Vulgar, Far Beyond Driven, and then listen to this and think that it's better, because it's in so many ways not. And I've tried over the years to look at it from different angles and go, well, this is good or this is good, but it's all just making excuses for shortcomings on an album. But that being said, I'm really picky about this album, because like when this came out in 1996, I was a giant Pantera fan. Far Beyond Driven is one of my favorite albums ever made. Same with, with Vulgar Display. And then Cowboys from Hell to me is up there with, like, if you were going to do a top metal albums ever made, I'd be like, well, Cowboys has to be in there. So when we get to Great Southern Trendkill, it was one of those things where I bought the album and I go, man, there are some cool songs on here. But every single time I've listened to it, I've had to go, man, I just wish it was better. So anyway,
I will say, like, I won't give too much away, but the thing I will say about that album is my favorite moments on it are the parts where there's like a breather, or it gets atmospheric, or they does something that isn't like full, like in your fucking face, nuts. It's like Tens. I fucking love that song.
Well, that's the thing. Tens is a great song. Floods is a great song. But there's that thing too where people will be like, Floods is my favorite Pantera song. I'm like, that's a little weird, but okay, because it's like, because that's literally the thing I said before about, like, you know, I love Nirvana. My favorite Nirvana song is The Man Who Sold the World. I'm just like, that's a cover song, but it's not really comparing it correctly. But you know what I mean? When somebody is a fan of a band and this is the band's sound and they choose this little thing, and I go, interesting.
I have to confess, I have at one point in my life, particularly in a bit of a depressive slump, mainly during the pandemic, I literally found myself listening to, and this is mentally, if you want a picture of where I was at mentally, I was not doing well at the end of 2020. And I found myself listening to an hour loop of the Floods outro, of the guitar playing and the rain, and I was just there like, this is my whole fucking vibe right now, man. I feel like shit. And I think back to that moment, I'm like, I've been Rocky IV in it since then, but my God, when I hear that, I think to myself, man, you were in a bad place. Fuck. Like,
but that's cool shit. Like you're right. Like I'm not saying that those are bad songs, because they're not. They're all great songs, and this overall is an album that's way better than most metal bands' best album, and it's an album that I think it just when it comes to Pantera, it's just it's always been a bit of a disappointment, and a frustrating album to listen to.
Yeah, I think the thing is, though, you're stacking it next to an absolute game-changing trilogy of albums.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I think that if, you know, you listen to how I talk about some albums, if this was an album that I didn't really care for, I wouldn't be talking this long about it. It would be me going, it didn't do anything for me. It's pretty good. Got some cool guitar parts, moving on. You know, it's like, that would be it. But this is a thing where, like, you know, it's a meaningful album for me, but it's always been one that I've struggled with. But you know, to each their own. If this is your favorite Pantera album, I mean, you're not wrong, because clearly it's your prerogative, and it's not overrated or underrated. I want to go on. I know nobody's going to listen to this, but can we all agree, just don't use the term overrated anymore? Because overrated literally just means you don't like it.
Yeah, I'm pissed off that this is popular. You know,
because it's always like towards something that clearly earned its popularity. It's you know, it's never aimed towards like some band that had a one hit and that was it. It's always like, you know, AC/DC totally overrated. I'm like, well, why? Like I can get not liking them, but overrated? Like, that's literally just like the buzzword for I'm a douchebag and I want you to hear my opinion. Overrated. There you go.
I think as well, there's a whole thing of, like, if there is something I will stand by, and I use this as it's a perfect analogy. Do I think Metallica are overrated? No. But I think a lot of their peers are underrated.
Sure.
I think, you know, there's...
But once again, that's an opinion of you thinking something should be more popular than it is.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we do on here. It's like, check this out though. Check this out too.
Yeah. I'm more about
pointing at Dave.
Yeah. Dave, I mean, Dave is one of those guys that people will call over or underrated, and I think that they're both wrong. But you know, it is what it is. But yeah, because I'm more about like you know, propping up the underdog. So I have less of a problem with underrated, just because it's usually used in a positive manner to prop up something that you think doesn't get the respect that it deserves. Because there's never a douchebag element to underrated. There's nothing but douchebaggery included with overrated.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, I don't know why. I think I see that so much now that it just bothers me, and I was like, I got to talk about it at some point. But I just, it gets stuck in my craw. Anyway, where are we?
Little pet little pet peeve.
Great Southern Trendkill was my number 4, and it's just despite what you might think, I actually really do like that album. It's just the next 3 that I'm going to be talking about, like serious bangers, like blow the doors off type shit. So okay,
I have pretty much been consistently in the love zone this entire time. There's not a Pantera album I don't really like.
Yeah.
I think there's ones that are significantly stronger, but on the flip side of that, it's a pretty hard to fuck with discography.
I would agree. Every album I would say that about.
That being said, this might be a hot take. My number 3, it still made the top 3. My number 3 is Vulgar Display of Power.
Yep.
And it's the first Pantera album I ever heard, and it's beloved for a reason. It rules. Like
it does.
Mouth for War. They've shed like 95% of their 80s-ness at this stage. The remaining 5% being the reverb on Hollow, but that's about it. But yeah, Mouth for War, killer opener, blows the doors open. Next logical step from Cowboys. A new level, like, I remember the first time I heard that.
Yeah.
Just that ping, ding, 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 ting, ding, ding, ding. Absolutely crushing song. Walk is the song every modern metal band of my generation grew up on. It was like, this is kind of like, there's kind of before Walk and there's after Walk,
Yeah.
Where everyone's like, oh, no, I'm mad. It's like, before it was like, heavy metal rules. It's like, fuck,
Yeah.
But, yeah, speaking of fucking hostile, Thrash Mode is a rallying cry for metalheads since the day it came out.
See that, and that's a good example of like the lyrics in fucking Hostile. Like that's what I mean about like, it's an angry song, but I read the lyrics and I go, I get this. I get it. So it's like it works a lot more than I don't like popular music now.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you mentioning as well. You did an episode of the Old Head podcast ages ago, and there's one thing you said that really stuck with me was the attitude, the collective attitude of metalheads used to be us versus them. So like there's the outsiders that want us to stop rocking, and there's us that are gonna turn it up louder the more they fucking whine, right? Whereas now it's like, I'm going through some stuff, okay? Like, and it's like when everybody's doing the same thematic stuff, it gets fucking boring. Like,
and technically that's emo, what you're talking about there. So it's
like,
but I have no problem with that. I mean, I actually, we're taking a step away from metal. When I say the word emo, I don't mean that as an insult, because there are some full on legit emo albums. I'm talking about actual emo. The emo elders are into those that I think are really good. And I also have no problem with songs about inner struggle or, horrible things that have happened in your life. But when that is the basis of not only the majority of your album, but the majority of every other album that's coming out, then it becomes like, I don't have time for all your problems, dude. There's other problems in the world, And so it's become, I think that's probably why so many metal fans now are like, stop being political, because they've forgotten that it used to be like, fuck all this shit. Song. We're gonna, we every, because it was like it's us versus them. But now it's like it's become so like, well, metal is all about me. So it's and so kind of unfortunately,
there's a lot of projection these days. People are trying to, they wrote that about me. Pick me. I'm the fan. I'm the fan. This is about. It's like that whole pick me girl shit. It's like, I'm so quirky. Whereas the metal version is, I'm angry because I'm depressed. Pay attention to me. It's like,
And I don't mean I never want anyone to think I downplay like depression and things like that, because I've dealt with that stuff, and I understand. I like some music that is very like that. But for some reason, when it comes to metal, the metal has always been an escape for me. That isn't supposed to be that. You're not supposed to remind me that, oh, I'm depressed or, oh, I deal with emotional issues or personal trauma. I don't want that in my metal. I want it to be, fuck the government, but not just fuck some governments. Like, I'm fine with this government, but not no. I want metal to be fuck every government. Everything's fucked up. Even if something's going really well, let's find what's not working about it and make a song about it. Like, that's what I always want. I want everything's fucked.
We can't get too comfy, otherwise nothing would change.
That's true, man. You know what? And like,
we fear change.
We do. That's why I think metal and punk and everything was so strong in the late 80s and the early 90s, because I feel like everyone that was making music, for the most part in America, Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr., everybody saw them as the enemy. There were no rockers that were like, well, he's got some good policies. It was like they hated them. And then eventually we get to Bill Clinton. We're all like, he's fine. What are we sing about? I'm depressed.
You can always guarantee as well, there's going to be like, there's always one comment in like episodes where we ever bring anything like this up. There's always going to be one guy where it's like, actually, Trump grabbing someone by the pussy, she was kind of asking for it, or something like that. What are these like?
Let me talk to you about all of the liberals that have grabbed pussies. Yeah. we had one of those in the last episode. We had a dude.
Some of them eat babies, like stuff like that. Yeah.
Which is funny, because like, you and I occasionally bring up, brief mentions of social issues or things like that, but neither one of us have ever.
Was hilarious. Why did the annoying British guy have to bring this up? This is a punk band, and I'm like,
it's a punk band. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I drew attention to it because Misfits, for a punk band, focused on a different theme, and right here I am. Oh, this fucking guy. Yeah. Well, fuck you too, huh?
Yeah. But I just think it's funny that like the since you brought it up, I do have to say that I think that the number one thing that I've learned from being on the internet and people like those people commenting on stuff is that the thing that's killing our country over here is everyone thinks that everything has to be one side or the other. And I'm like, wow, because everyone thinks it's a fucking football game, and by that I mean American football game. I've seen football fans over there are fucking crazy sometimes. I know, I get that, but over here it's more like you root for your team even if they totally suck, and if somebody says they suck to you, you go, no, they don't. They're just having a bad season. So somebody broke their knee. The coach is not having a good year. But they just make excuses for it. And I was like, well, that's not how I think about things. So whenever somebody points at me and said, you said this one thing, you're a left winger and a liberal, and I go, well, first off, the word liberal, how is that an insult? Because that isn't supposed to mean open and accepting. You're already a moron there. But it's like there are plenty of things where I find myself floating towards the middle. I'll admit I'm on the left side of things, but there are plenty of left leaning things that are happening in the world that I go, that's also fucking ruining things. And so when somebody points and says it's got to be one side or the other, I'm like, you're a moron and you're the problem. So there you go. It's not black and white. It's all shades of gray, as Biohazard once put it. I just know they have a song called Shades of Gray, but it's not about that, I don't think. But
you had a good point, though. I mean, if you dissect all the fucking social issues in the world, it's just a giant tangled web of shit, you know. And you got to account for the fact that there's people on all sides who are shitbags.
Agreed. Absolutely agree. And that's what metal should be. It shouldn't be this one's okay. It should be there are shitbags all over the place. Let's point them out.
Yeah.
And that's I don't know. But I think that's the liberal thinking, which means that not just there can't just be one answer to something. And I think that's the problem, is that everything has to have one answer, but it's like that's not how life works. Sometimes the answer to something is something that isn't going to 100% solve a problem, but it's going to push us in the right direction. But people are like, well, if it doesn't solve it, then I'm not on board. Well, I'm just like, you got to try. Yeah. I'm not going to mention any issues, but I'm going to say you have to try things to see if things will work. And then
gas prices are too high. We need to invade Canada.
That would be the ultimate irony if like we end up like invading Canada, like what everyone thinks is this like really kind and peaceful country, and then they just annihilate us when we walk through. That would be
on moose back. They're just like
That's actually a pretty epic kind of image in my head on moose back.
Yeah, I'm starting to imagine this like dystopian future where there's like mech moose. And they're like half cyborg fucking moose that like have like chain guns mounted on their antlers. That'd be sick.
Yeah,
I want this now.
This is good. We've gotten off of being serious. We got serious for a minute, and I usually like to avoid that because that's not what I'm all about on the internet. That's why if you follow me on social media, I don't really make statements about things going on in the world because I don't want to argue. I don't want to argue about it. I have my opinions, but I am not a jerk off, and I keep them to myself.
There are people who enjoy debate, and I am not one of them. I'm
fine. I'm fine with debates. I don't know if you've seen what debate has become.
Yeah, I suppose it's more. It depends on like I would happily have a debate with someone about like metal bands or something like that. Something I feel qualified to talk about. Now, if somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, we want you to debate, this guy on the history of LGBT," I'd be like, "I'm going to be real. I'm not educated enough. I like everybody. That is my statement."
Yeah.
There, boom.
Yeah.
I don't care who you fucking like, straight up.
That's the thing. One last thing, and we'll move on. I think that it's true. It's true that everybody's opinion matters, but most people have to realize that they don't have all the answers and they're not an expert. So it's just, including me. Like it's, that's why I don't say shit most of the time, because I don't have the answers, folks. I just I don't.
Well, Stephen, the facts don't care about your feelings. It's like Ben Shapiro.
Fuck that. Yeah. See, that's what I'm vocal about. As a person like that, that's a douchebag, and I'm all about getting rid of those people. Just like, I don't know why I love the fact that it's become the sort of thing where I now that I'm like I don't know, I'm not a public figure. What would you call me? An entertainer? I mean, I qualify as something because I'm on the internet and I talk a lot, but I'm not.
I was going to call you a VJ. Kind of give you a.
That sounds dirty.
Not a vagina. Just the was it the like MTV back in the day? You would have like
a VJ.
Yeah,
a video jockey.
Video jockey.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but I do just bringing it back to what we were saying about like metal being angry about like stuff that's happened to you, rather than it's kind of hard for me to take someone seriously when they are quite clearly a jock, but they're singing about being a nerd, and it's like there's an authenticity problem here. Because you can't come out here and convince me that you Mr. Macho Man Randy Savage looking motherfucker comes out and tells me, you know, oh, I was like so totally like fucking bullied in high school. It's like, motherfucker, you were doing the bullying in high school. I don't believe that for a second. Like, I'm sure, like, you know, people have shit in their lives, and this is not me tarring anyone.
Everybody does, yeah.
But it's like a jock approach to a more of a kind of, you know, if you want to compare it to the jock and the nerd, it's a jock singing about what a hard time they're having. Meanwhile, you know, they're banging all the cheerleaders. So
not saying that jocks can't have a hard time, but this is what I'm talking about gray areas. So if you're a football player who gets whatever woman he wants and your family is really rich, that doesn't mean that I'm going to look at you and go, you don't have problems, but you have to understand that your problems are serious for you, but other people have it way harder than you. And sometimes you just need to kind of keep your shit to yourself. So it's just that sort of thing. It's just realize that there's levels to everything. But the point I was trying to make is that, like, I'm out here talking and I look around the internet and I go, man, if I just acted like an asshole all the time, I'd be making so much money on the internet right now. Because those are the people that make the money. People that talk about shit that they don't know what they're talking about and make completely false statements. And then later on, people will call them out and go, you said this. And they'll be like, no, I didn't. And nobody cares. Nobody cares that they just lie and make shit up and act like an asshole. And I'm like, wow, that's all I would have to do. And then I could be rich and famous doing this.
You just got to be an asshole grifter and you make a shit ton of money.
I can't, and I wish that I could do it, but I can't. Like, I feel bad. I feel bad even for this segment right here. I feel guilty for doing this segment because I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to, I'm glad that we talk about this stuff because I feel like it's important. And honestly, I don't talk to very many people. So when I talk to you, it's good to get these things out. But at the same time, like, the way that I view myself as a YouTuber, I guess, and podcaster is like, I want my role to be a positive role. Even though there's so much negativity in the world, I want people to be able to come to my shit and go, you know what, I'm going to go there. And I know that for the most part, he's going to try to have a good time and hope everybody else is also having a good time. And so I can't break myself from that in order to, win all the money and the fame. Maybe I'll get there one day. You never know. I'm bringing you with me, buddy.
Hell yeah.
All right, back to Pantera. We're now on to our top three. Oh no, you were already talking about yours.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We did like a glam rock tangent, and we did like a weird political social tangent. Next up, it's going to be all about weed legalization in about 20 minutes. So just stay tuned.
Cool. So this love, right? This song, I have grown a major appreciation for it over the years. Like, I remember, like, the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, okay, this is like the ballad. So, like, even like when I first heard it, I was still kind of coming to understand how to play things on guitar. So I didn't recognize the riff in the middle as fucking cool as it is, right? But when I started really paying attention to this song, I was like, oh my God, like this slow, smoky, angry, boiling rager of a song. Like, these spooky, clean guitar parts are nice, but the middle riff where shit gets real is probably, it's up there in like top 5 dime riffs.
Oh, you're talking about jun 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 jun. Oh, okay. That's great too. But let's talk about that breakdown. Speaking of great Pantera breakdowns, add that one to the list. The breakdown on and they do that great thing where it comes back again, only slower.
Yeah.
So perfect.
It goes from to.
Yeah.
That's a video exclusive.
There were some faces there. Different levels of metalness.
Yeah. But like, here we go. We hop on over to side B kind of zone, I believe.
No.
Is Rise where side B starts?
Rise is the end of side A.
Rise is the end of side A. Right. Okay. It starts out real thrashy, goes into the groove thing, but the big thing I loved about this was like, it's time to.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, that part there always struck me as that's so cool. Dude, No Good, Attack the Radical is one of two bracket songs on this album.
Yeah.
It's a great one. Live in a Hole is Sabbath on steroids.
That's such a good. I love that one. That I don't think that one gets talked about enough, but I think that's a great song.
Here's the thing, right? Though, every time it comes on, I find myself dancing to the intro. I do like a little dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Like I can't not.
Do that again. No, wait, never mind. It's not going to work on the video because the way I'm looking at you right now, you're underneath me, and for a second there, it looked like my head was your head. Sorry, folks, it's not going to work that way at home. We're next to each other.
I've got an old head. But yeah, it's a great fucking song.
Yeah.
Regular People, Conceit, the other of the two bracket songs on this album, is a cool one. Man, By Demons Be Driven is just grooving, pounding badassery. And I remember there was one time. Now here's me, like, my douchey quality. I have like one douche quality, and that is obnoxiously blasting music with the windows down in my car. That is like my one big fuck you to society, because I'm like, who's gonna stop me, huh? Who's gonna fucking stop me?
The real question is, when you're parking, do you turn the music down? Because
a little bit. Yeah, I do a little bit. I'm like, okay, I'm going backwards. I need to think. But
no, I'm like that shit's up to where it's like blasting, and then once I get to my street and I have to park, that shit goes down to like 5. I'm just like, it's like 5 out of like 100. It's like literally just like look, I have to park. Okay.
Nah, I'm that stereotypical 80s guy from the drug PSA you get in an after school special that shows up, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to Twisted Chains concert tonight. Do you want to get in the back of my van and do fucking heroin?
You open up your door and it's just smoke billowing out of your car when you get out of it.
It's so funny. So one time I pulled up outside of my girlfriend's house, and at the time she lived in like the kind of uni town where I was, and I remember I drove down the road. And she said, I could hear you from like the very top of the hill. And I was like, I know. That's a
compliment right there.
Yeah. But I was just like driving down through, shittiest car ever. Like, I had a crap fucking Vauxhall Corsa, which is a, stereotypical, wow, this guy doesn't have a lot of money. Like, that's
a very not American car, because I'm like, I don't even know if I've heard that name before.
Yeah, it doesn't bode well with my image. I'll say that. It's stereotypical for being a bit of a nonce-mobile as well. Like anyone who drives a Corsa, FBI. So I was like, oh, for Christ's sake. But it's just kind of a running gag. I didn't have the side fringe, so I'm not scared.
Yeah.
There's a little callback to the joke we made earlier.
We did, yep.
But
if you rewind it, if you want to watch it again. Yeah. I don't know where it was.
But yeah, I remember pulling up outside it, and all of Amy's friends were like, this fucking guy. But I was just there like, by demons, be driven. So good.
Hell yeah.
But Hollow is the closer, and well, that's a good name for that sounds like an Alice in Chains title. I mean, obviously it's called Hollow, but I was thinking Hollow, but I forgot what I fucking said. Someone make a timestamp so I can
The Closer
again. Hollow the Closer. That sounded like a cool title. But yeah, it's a contender for the beefiest power ballad of all time. Like, because it does go from like power ballad to holy shit.
Yeah.
Damn, dude.
That one's a little more like when it comes to ballad, like what Metallica were doing in the 80s, where it was like it would be soft and then it would get heavy later on in the song. Whereas this love is a very unique song to me, because it's at the time I'm like, I don't think I had heard a song like that where it is so mellow and then in the chorus becomes fucking heavy as fuck.
You get this love first.
Yeah.
Child. But yeah, I love Vulgar Display of Power.
Yep.
And it is my third favorite Pantera album.
Sweet. For my third favorite Pantera album, I think I probably threw a lot of people for a loop here because you probably expect this to be higher. But like I said, I got real picky. I got very picky with looking at things from different angles and trying to figure out where everything should go. I take my job very seriously. I don't get paid very much for it, but here's what happened. My number 3 is Far Beyond Driven from 1994, which is, I could easily say it's my favorite Pantera album. A lot of it is real personal. It's like I was trying to find this article I heard somebody talk about where they were talking about how the music, if you're really into music, the music that you listen to in your early teen years up until a certain point is the music that's always going to be very meaningful to you. I think it's because it's some sort of combination of it's all new to you, so you're learning about things, and your brain is still forming at that point. It's still growing or whatever, you know. And so I'm guessing it's some sort of scientific thing where shit just latches into your brain, and it's in some sort of part of your brain that immediately hits some kind of emotional, a nostalgia type thing. So an album like Far Beyond Driven, I kind of put it in that area because it's one of those albums that I do just look at the cover. Not this cover that's behind me. That's the one I don't really like, but it's the butthole cover, which is, if I could give anybody a piece of advice, just keep buttholes off of your album covers all together. Because most of the time it just stops me from ever listening to the album because I'm not a fan of buttholes. So
a booty is fine.
Yes, just keep cheeks closed.
Yeah.
Okay.
No spreading.
Hopefully, if it's a female butt, the cheeks are big enough to where they can't do anything about it. That shit's closed because it's too much, too much booty in the pants. But so Far Beyond Driven is, I don't know where I was going with that, but just seeing the album cover and hearing the music, it just transports me to being in high school. And you mean
the blue one, right? With the
blue, skull. the blue album cover. Because that's how it looked. Like I remember, me and a bunch of my friends and I don't know if we were dating yet, but the girl that would end up being my first major girlfriend. I remember we were hanging out and we walked over to the Best Buy that was nearby, and I bought Far Beyond Driven on cassette because it had just come out. And it was that sort of thing where it was like, oh man, I don't have enough money to get the CD, but they have it on cassette, so I guess I'll just buy it. And I played the fuck out of that. And it's everything surrounding the album, including like the coverage they were getting on Headbangers Ball, where they were talking about the album and then premiering the video for Unbroken, which is one of my favorite videos ever made. All of those things and just like the vibe of that time and that music makes it very important to me. Now, if I put all that aside, comparatively speaking, it's not their strongest album. But the reason why this one ends up at number 3 over some other ones is because they did become more extreme. This is a step up in extremity, but there's still a lot of catchiness in the songs on this album. And vocally speaking, even though Phil gets more aggressive, he still manages to have vocal lines and phrasing that I'm like, this made the song great. Also, it isn't just the band or just Dimebag's riff or whatever. Everything together, I think, still is working like a well-oiled machine with these guys. I will admit that I've always been very vocal about the fact that I think that Good Friends and a Bottle of Pills kind of kills the momentum of the album a little bit. Because if it
fucked your girlfriend last night,
yeah,
she called me daddy, I called her baby, and I smacked her ass.
If you see what I mean.
Do it.
But it's only because if that had been taken out, I get it. It's kind of an experimental tune, and I appreciate it for that. But if the way that I'm Broken ends, and then if it faded out, and then what the fucking next song is called after that. Oh my God, I'm so bad. It's a bad time to have a brain fart. But
I'll save you.
If it had gone straight into that song,
Far Beyond Driven.
Sorry,
I'm on it, dude. I'm on it. Dun dun. Oh no, I don't want to get claimed. Yeah, it's. Oh no, yeah, it's Hardline Sunken Cheeks.
Hardline Sunken Cheeks. If it had gone from I'm Broken fading out into Hardline, I think that would have been fucking awesome. But the album is what it is. The album also contains what I probably would consider my favorite Pantera song, which is Slaughtered. And that's only because like every part of that song just kicks my ass every fucking time. And it's also a case where Phil is trying to do really aggressive vocals and it works with the song. And and there's so many badass riffs in Slaughtered. Like, first off, you have the really great sort of Dimebag, like drunken riff. Like, I love that shit. And then I talked about on the last episode, the middle riff in that song. It's just one of the best riffs ever written to me. But there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like, most of this album are songs that I go, this is some of their best shit. In pulling it apart, there's not they become a little bit too focused on, I guess, upping the ante with their being heavy and extreme. And so they did leave behind a little bit of what made Cowboys from Hell really special. And there's a little bit of like Vulgar Display of Power has so many like iconic moments on it that this one doesn't necessarily have. And now I'm all like, okay, well, this one takes the seat in third. That and the last couple tracks, not talking about Planet Caravan, but the last couple tracks in this album, while they have really cool parts in them, to me, they're not quite as good as the rest of the album. And so once I get to that point, and I'm being really honest with myself, I go, okay, I love this album. It's one of my favorite albums of all time, but comparatively speaking, taking a step back, this one had to go at number 3. So Far Beyond Driven ends up being my number 3, which means that you and I do not have the same top 2, but I'm curious if where we're going to match up with Cowboys from Hell, or if we're going to match up with Cowboys from Hell.
Okay. So like you, I also have a strong personal connection to the album I've put this high. Okay. That you'd put a couple spaces down.
Oh, all right. All right.
My number 2 is The Great Southern Trendkill.
Okay.
And my reason for this strong personal connection, back in high school, I had an incident with another student that ended up with my knee being absolutely fucked.
We talked about that on an episode, I think, but I don't remember which one it was.
Yeah. To those of you squeamish with injury detail, I'm going to try and make it as least gory as possible, but I can categorically tell you it was the worst pain I've ever been in my life. My leg twisted around his. He did kind of a kung fu kind of thing.
And literally, this wasn't like a fight. This was some random jerk off just running up to him and kick you. He kicked you or what?
Well, now what had happened is I kind of went over, and he thought it would be funny to like flip me, but without getting too, deep into how it played out, he kind of grabbed my arm, stuck his leg out to do kind of like a karate judo kind of flip. I wasn't expecting it at all. And my
seems very unnecessary.
Yeah, my leg kind of twisted around his. My kneecap and my left leg slides 90 degrees to the right out of the socket. The two bones do this. One goes one way, the other goes another.
This is the most metal part of the entire show.
yeah, because this is fucking insane. Like, because he flips me.
You could pause that when I'm wincing from you telling the story, and they'll be like, he's probably listening to a really sick riff right now.
It's gonna be a meme template for sure. But like, anyway, I land with my full body's weight on the kneecap, and I land. Said impact at the time, the kneecap is dislocated, which is painful enough.
Yeah.
The kneecap has fractured in half down the middle. So now I have a kneecap in half, 90 degrees to the right. And I'm thinking, oh shit. You know, all him and all his friends went to the PE lesson, and I was like, I'm just kind of stuck here. I can't stand up. In the end, a PE teacher came over and said, "Why aren't you in my lesson?" And I said,
"They just left you there."
Yeah, they just left me there, and they will.
That makes it worse. I didn't know that part.
Yeah, here we go. This is where it gets kind of fucked. The teacher comes over and says, "Why aren't you in my class?" I said, "I can't walk. Something bad has happened to my leg." At the time, I thought I'd had like just a really severe muscle pull. Like I thought I tore a tendon or something like that. I didn't know that my kneecap was utterly fucked. Like you may as well have taken a fucking sledgehammer to the fucking thing because it was messed up.
Yeah.
But they put me in a wheelchair, wheeled me to the front of the school, and they said, "Okay, we're gonna try." This is where like systemically you start to see the cracks in the school system. The receptionist says, "Right, well, it won't be long until the end of the school day. Sit here with this book, and we're gonna try and get you on the bus on the way home." I'm like, "On a bus? When I get to the bus stop, what do you want me to do? Crawl home?"
They didn't give you the option to call your parents or something?
I said straight up, I said, "Nah, I am not getting on a bus if I can't fucking walk." I couldn't bend my leg, right? Yeah. I had it at a perfect 90-degree angle, which was the only time it didn't hurt because the thing had swelled up to like twice its size. And I was in the chair, and I said, "Look, I'm gonna ring my mum. She finishes work soon anyway." I rang her up, and we get in the back of the Land Rover she had at the time, and we went to a nearby smaller hospital in kind of Newquay, and we got there, and I limped with my mum. I was there for about half an hour, and they said, "Your leg's fucked, mate. You need to go to Treliske, which is the major hospital in Cornwall." I get there.
I like to think that in England, that's the way the doctors talk. "Your leg's fucked, mate."
Yeah, pretty much. He was like, "Nah, that's too big. That's too big for air."
On your bike.
Yeah, it's like, what am I gonna do? Pedal? Yeah, it's like, so we get there, and I remember I was sitting, and I was probably listening to Pantera just to pass the time, but I was just there sweating like, oh my god, if I remotely move my leg right now, it's gonna hurt like hell. So it's just there, hyper focused. I think I was playing a game called like Zombie Gunship. It was like one of those like top-down shooter kind of things on the phone. Anyway, they try to straighten the leg out eventually. They get me on a table, and they say, "Right, we're gonna try and straighten it, see what's wrong." Right? They get about halfway there. All of a sudden, muscle spasms begin. What happens when that happens? The two halves of the knee just start grinding against each other.
Oh, shit.
And I was it's the one time in my life I have legitimately just screamed in agony until they got me like sedated. And I was 14 years old. And I remember I took like 4 puffs of this shit, right? I went from like agonizing pain to kind of flirting with the nurse. And I was like, "Thank you for this. I like you. I'll buy you a drink." And it's like you're sedated on a hospital bed, like. But I just remember, and the second time that happened, the following night, my leg was in a splint, and I just remember. This is a really gory story, so sorry to anyone who's like eating or something. But
I love that we've had so many different tangents in this episode, and this one is the most extreme so far.
Well, I'm going to get to how Great Southern Trendkill ties in a minute, because at home, I remember, like, that same thing happened again, but this time I was on my sofa at home. So I didn't have the anesthetic that they had there. So here I am now, just absolutely screaming that. I was like, fuck! Ah! Like just uncontrollable pain.
Yeah.
And then in the end, I said, just give me some fucking ice or something. And they're like, that's not going to stop the spasms. I'm like, I'm going to freeze it till it's fucking numb then. So I just dumped as much frozen shit on it as I could until it just stopped, until it like went completely numb. And I was like, right, from now on, no sudden leg movements from me. Well, about like 2 months later, all the muscle tissue in it had died. And so I had this like one string bean fucking leg. The other one was absolutely hench, but this one was just fucked. But yeah, about 2 weeks later, I had the operation and gradually got back on my feet. But I was so angry at the entire thing that there was only one album during the physio that got me, you know, if I was having a particularly angry moment, I'd be like, fuck it. I'm going to listen to the entire Great Southern Trendkill while I'm at the gym.
Yeah.
That shit got me back on my feet, this album. And I just remember hearing it and just thinking, I can channel the viciousness and the fury of this album into getting better. So that's kind of why I can kind of look past this album's shortcomings, because at the time it just filled me with such a motivational rage.
And once again, we're talking about something that happened to you when you were 14, in that period of your life when you're, so it's like, so it makes sense. I was 14 when Far Beyond Driven came out. So what was I?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I was sick.
It got me through a lot.
16. I was 16. Jesus. Okay.
Damn, dude. You're old.
I know.
I'm jealous though, so
that's why I call my channel Old Head. You didn't know that?
Yeah. No, I thought you were young. I'm Young Balls. You remember that?
Young Balls.
Yeah, you remember that? That's my rap name.
Yep.
Young Balls. But yeah. So the Great Southern Trendkill, they upped the insanity. How they made an even more abrasive opener than Strength Beyond Strength is beyond me, but they did it. War Nerve is a badass song.
That's a great one. I love that one.
And I gotta just quickly jump back to the Great Southern Trendkill. The opening part isn't what gets me. It's the
oh yeah, I love that part. That is that's the best part of that whole song to me.
My favorite part is like right at the end of the solo where it like gets really slow and fades out.
Oh yeah.
Like there are some really tasty moments on this album. War Nerve, like I say, Drag the Waters, the first single from this album, kicks ass. Tens, I love the vibe of Tens. This whole song, this is an underrated song, I would say. You know, but I remember seeing like I was with again with my band members. I'm in a band called Sage, by the way. There's a little shameless plug there. But yeah, the fucking part at the start where he's like, my skin is cold, trying to with somebody. Morosa, no. Like that part gets me every time. 13 Steps to Nowhere, the kind of tribal-esque drumming with that groovy-ass guitar work is so good. Suicide Note Part 1 is a welcome, albeit dark, break from the heaviness of this record.
Yeah.
Which leads directly into Suicide Note Part 2, which is arguably the most mental song they've ever done, like, heaviness-wise. So, like, that ending as well, that dun 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 wee 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 dum dum dum, and it comes back even slower, and then it stops. And you think, fuck, that was good. Like, it's one of those moments where you laugh at how awesome it is. You're like, you know, Living Through Me, Hell's Wrath, is kind of groove thrash kind of thing. Reminds me a little of that Prong song, Cut Rate. but with like Pantera's kind of
that's a good
southern
song.
twist on it. Floods has some of the greatest guitar work of Dime's career. It's just so tasteful in the solos.
Yeah.
And that the ending with the rain still gives me goosebumps, because I think to myself, wow, even on something that has so many, you know, ugly sounding heavy moments, there's some beautiful moments in that song. Underground in America to this day is one of the heaviest things I've ever heard. Like the tone he got from the tuning on that song is just like and Reprise, Sandblasted Skin is essentially part 2 to one of the heaviest things I've ever heard. And it's with that personal connection I have to this album that I will admit the songwriting on some of their earlier stuff is more memorable, but when I listen to this album, it's kind of like a recovery journey for me. Like by the end of the album, it's like I've gotten better all over again, you know? So it's kind of built into my mind. It's like, this is the sound of me getting better, you know? Even if it is.
That's one of the best excuses I've heard for this album being high on a list. But you are right. But you're all right. You're right though. Like a lot of you mentioned a whole lot of things, and I go, yeah, he's right. All those things fucking rule. But the majority of those things are Dime riffs that make the album great. Because even you mentioned Floods, and I'm like, Floods would have been better if like Phil would have had a better vocal part in it, because it goes really well with it. But every time I hear it, I go, it's all right.
Flood. But yeah, it's a great album, especially if you had someone fuck your knee up. But yeah,
I want to know. I want to know who that guy is, so we can go like.
I won't dox him. Internet. It's in the past.
Get all the peanut butter platypuses to go and like.
Covert operation.
Yeah.
It's okay. I forgive you.
Okay.
Even though it hurt like hell.
That's very mature of you. All right, my number 2. So we literally have completely different lists. My number 2 is Cowboys from Hell from 1990. And I made a reference earlier to how this album and what my number 1 is, which now you know clearly it's Vulgar Display of Power, are so close together. They're like they might as well be glued together.
Might as well be a double album.
Well, but they're not similar. Like there's the differences make them separate, but how I feel about them and the good qualities and positive things and all the things about them that I love and I think are important in metal keep them to where it's like it's a really tight 1 and 2 for me. So for this one, first off, it's just a huge fucking step forward for the band. Massive step forward. We talked about it on the last one where it's like that was a point that Integrity 101 brought up, that a lot of the songs on power metal were songs that they had kind of already written before Phil had come on board. And that album was 1988. So you really think about it, they had several years of probably fucking around with new stuff. And all it takes is one song to like create a vibe and go, that's good. Let's do more of those things. And so I guess, it moved them on their way, I guess. And so by 1990 or whenever they recorded the album, they had this whole new, like it was like a rebirth, for this band.
I will say there's a really interesting demo called The Will to Survive that they did. I don't know if you've heard it. It's on like a deluxe reissue of Cowboys. But in it, you hear like it. First of all, there's the riff, the middle riff from This Love is in there, like but even faster, tying like the sections together. But like the rest of the song is still rooted in the 80s sound. So it's this weird hybrid at the time of like, they didn't even include it on Cowboys, but it's the most perfect meeting of the two Panteras.
Yeah.
And it's so strange to hear. Phil doing the will to survive, like sort of thing, but then follow it up with bigga digga 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 digga. Like you could tell that there was a serious like seismic shift happening there.
Yeah, and some people have been very vocal of pointing out that they think that it's because they heard the band Exorder and decided to nick their sound a little bit. But honestly, like, if you listen to Slaughter in the Vatican, like there are songs on there that if I didn't know any better, I'd be like, is this an early unreleased Pantera one that I didn't know about? Because not all of the albums, some of the album is completely different, but vocally, I'm all like, well, that sounds very similar to what Phil started doing. But you have to be aware of the fact that those two dudes already had similar voices anyway. So part of it is that the tone of their voices are very similar. So it's already going to sound similar. But who knows? I usually like to think that, great minds think alike sometimes. The only thing I am going to say is that, as great of an album as I think Slaughter in the Vatican is, the quality of the songwriting on Cowboys from Hell completely destroys that album. So yeah, I mean, I really like Cowboys from Hell. And I think, honestly, I could understand easily this being somebody's favorite Pantera album. I also could understand why I've heard some people say that's the only Pantera album they really like. And it's only because you really take a step back and like pull apart everything that happens on Cowboys from Hell. It's, however many tracks it is, 12 tracks. I don't remember how many tracks it is. I'm right offhand, but it's such a diverse, it's still metal, but it's such a dynamic and diverse album from all the different kinds of things that you get on here. And every single song is, to me, is so well written. Everybody bringing their A game. The riffs are amazing. The rhythm section sounds fantastic. What Phil is doing to me is great because at that point he could still do the high notes, but he's not doing it way too much. He's doing extreme vocals when they feel appropriate with the part of the song. It's just, everything feels like locked in perfectly, but not so much towards like, well, we're heavy now. It's like they still have that one foot in, well, we like being melodic. And that's why I think Cowboys from Hell succeeds so well for me, because it does have those things that are fucking brutal on it, but at the same time, shit that's like just such well-written metal songs with good melodies and tasty guitar parts. All of those things are present on Cowboys from Hell. And since we're talking about this album, I could also point out another, I guess, complaint I have. Stop listing Pantera with thrash bands. Let's do that right now, because if you really count the thrash that they've done, that's actual thrash, it's probably equates to about 4 or 5 songs.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's only a part that's thrash and another part is not.
Yeah.
So I really hate it when people are like, my favorite thrash bands, and then they put Pantera in there. And I was like, number one, that means that you're completely ignoring the early stuff, which is annoying. If the faster stuff they did there would be easily more speed metal, maybe a little thrashy, but not too much. But I realized they did thrash stuff and they did it really well, but it's such a small part of what they were doing. And
it counts for a minute section of their discography.
Yeah, that's literally like saying, Testament or a death metal band, because they did that one album where he did death metal vocals. It's like, no, that's not what they are. So I just think that Pantera deserve more respect for being a band that really, when we're talking about all of these albums, and I'm going to even include Great Southern Trendkill in here, they kind of defy categorization, because even if you want to say groove metal, they're going to throw a dozen things at you that are absolutely not groove metal. Yeah. And so that's why I think it's so great. And I think Cowboys from Hell is the best example of like them literally saying, here's all the things that we can fucking nail. And is an album filled with all of them. You've got Cemetery Gates, which it's probably one of the best metal songs ever written, and it's fucking beautiful. Performance wise, it's a beautiful song. Even the heavy parts are beautiful. It's such a well done song. And then you've got, you know, stuff like Primal Concrete Sledge and things like that. And obviously the Domination Breakdown, heavy as fuck, but everything is just so well done. So much so that's why this one, I was really confused about, I don't know what to put as number 1 or number 2, because every song is strong on this album. And it's just like, it's that meme you see where the guy just goes banger, 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 banger. Like that's Cowboys from Hell. But like there's not there, to me, there's no weak point in this album, and it also gives you a variety of songs, so it's very enjoyable all the way through. So I could point at this and say, this is the best Pantera album because of that. But I have stronger reasons for why my number 1 is my number 1. And so we can just, because this is your number 1, right? We're
number one is Cowboys.
We'll transfer one of those words.
Cool.
Over to you, because this is one of those things where I absolutely agree with you putting this at number 1.
It's one of those best of both worlds situations where they are firing on all cylinders. They've discovered this whole other side of them. They've still got the melody focus of their previous work, but they're doing it in a way that translates to where they would go from here. And right out of the gate, Cowboys from Hell, absolutely immortal song. What a fucking game changer.
You know, I'm gonna this might be an unpopular opinion, but I absolutely think this. That's my least favorite song on the album. Cowboys from Hell.
Really?
I think every other song on the album is stronger than Cowboys from Hell. That says a lot, because I think that's also a great song. But all the other songs, any of those songs come on and I go, oh fuck, this has that badass part. And I think maybe I don't know what it is, but like just the fact that the first song, a song that you're so well known for doing, to me, like a fan, I'm like, well, it gets a lot better. It gets better like as the album goes. So
I remember like for the first time I ever heard it go, I was like, what am I in for?
Yeah.
I just remember, like, again, it was like the Maxell cassette advert where like you're being blown backwards in your chair. It's like, I remember thinking that, like, oh my god. And like you say, it's not even the strongest song on the album. I'm with you there. Primal Concrete Sledge, drumming on this as well. Like, I know it's double kick. He's not a flashy guy, but there's like some tom work in there, and there's a strange hi-hat hit in there, and I've been trying to figure it out for ages. And I think I have been doing it wrong for a while. I kind of need to unlearn it. But
the thing about Vinnie Paul's drumming, which we've talked enough about Dimebag because everybody loves him, but Vinnie Paul's drumming, he's almost to the point where it sounds like a drum machine to me. Not like just because it seems so precise in everything he does. Like
he's also got such a swing to it as well.
But it's almost like it's being done by a robot that just had been programmed to do the perfect swing and the perfect fills and everything fits, perfect. It doesn't sound like robotic, but it's got this precision to it. I guess that's the best word. Is his drumming is so precise, and he was such a great drummer because he did shit that elevated the song. Like there are some drummers that are way too flashy, some drummers that are way too simple, especially if you were in a band like Pantera. But I feel like everything that he chose to do, I think he and Dime worked so well together. And then him and Rex as a rhythm section. It's always just hit me as like, man, it's just so like spot on, like perfect,
Definitely, man. Like, and then you get Psycho Holiday. Wait, hang on. I forgot to mention that part in the middle of Primal Concrete Sledge. talk about like breakdowns and that, and then that sneaks up on you, and then like all of the stuff in that song is like, damn,
yeah,
that's tasty.
yeah,
Psycho Holiday, groove of this track.
yeah,
It's a really fun, accessible song, but it's still super heavy.
yeah.
Heresy.
Oh, that's a fucking tune right there, man.
Yeah. If any of them are going to be like thrash, this is one of the more thrashy.
Yep, songs. Yep. I'd put that one up there. That one I would just say that's a legit thrash song, or it feels like it to me.
Yeah, but like the big thing I'm always waiting for in this song is so they can lick my sack. Like,
yeah,
it's like he could have said so they can suck my dick, they can kiss my ass. Nah, lick my sack. Like no other song I can think of has lick my sack in it. So
it seems very appropriate, though. I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, it just works. Only to follow up that rather crude number with one of the most beautiful metal songs ever written, Cemetery Gates.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the beefiest power ballad of all time.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit. The way this song develops throughout, like it starts out like there's piano at the beginning underneath the guitars.
Yeah.
It's so layered and it's really pretty. And then, obviously like really cool stuff. And then the second verse is doing like a mellow thing, but it's more of a band situation. And then it takes off. I guess you took my youth, gave it all away. Like stuff like that. And throughout every single thing, and it's such a climax at the end with the, them doing a call and response of like,
oh yeah. Now that's the that's a standout part for Phil. But like honestly, the thing in that song that I've always loved is the way he hits those notes right before the chorus. With the way he hits that, I'm always like, that sounds so good. It's always just been one of those moments where I go, that's so good. But yeah,
it's almost like Jeff Tate operatic stuff going on.
Yeah, that's that level of awesome.
And I remember hearing that, and I'm kind of bummed a little bit that this is the only album where we truly get that sort of thing out of Phil.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I know that maybe on something like Great Southern Trendkill it wouldn't be as much of a fit, but like saying a song like Floods, if that was in there.
But you see what I'm saying about how if you take the vocal melody from, let's just say, just the verses of Cemetery Gates, and you compare it to what he does on Floods, I know it's a different kind of song, but I'm just like, there's something really missing there. It's something that it's a level of emotion that's like, that feels kind of not empty, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
It's I would call it's 1996 and that ain't cool right now, I guess.
Yeah. But, I guess it is a matter of taste and opinion, because I could see how somebody would think that that's much better than what he does on Cemetery Gates, because maybe it comes across as a little cheeseball. I mean, I don't know how, but people, I think it's just really good. People are strange that way, I guess.
But here's the thing: to have had a run of those 5 songs and then Domination.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, this song, like the solo and subsequent breakdown is the absolute benchmark of what every metal band since wishes they could crush as hard as, right? Yeah. I don't care if your deathcore band can make me physically shit myself with how low your H string is tuned, right? Nothing you will ever do in that field will come close to the shit like Domination. And it's in fucking E standard tuning.
Yeah.
Like that song is it's to this day, right, one of the heaviest things I've ever heard, and it's in the songwriting. It's not to do with the tuning, Granted, it came out in a time where, this is just before down tuning really became the big thing, to do. Certain bands had played with it previously, but, this is just pre-grunge, and just that whole solo, incredible. And then the way it builds up. I even think that the fucking live version of this as well, where he hits that insane like whammy pedal harmonic dive, and he lifts his guitar up, and he's like, it's still one of those images that just sticks with you. And I'm like, to this day, I watch him with like my mouth agape, like, dude. But yeah, it's such a cool song. Shattered is just groovy speed metal.
Broken glass. That fucking riff. That riff. It's great. It's tasty, man.
Clash with Reality. Like when the groove hits in that song, it just feels so goddamn right. Medicine Man, understand.
That also has that's got great vocals on it too.
Yeah, I just, again, like I say, the biggest thing I miss from future Pantera releases is that Halford wail. Message in Blood is this proggy groovy fucker. The Sleep, that guitar solo is so hauntingly good.
That's another fucking great riff. That's
another one of those.
and there's my head. I wish I could take a picture of that for the show the people, but it's going to look really weird side by side. But trust me, it looked cool over how I'm looking at it right now.
I'm sure they can.
And for those of you listening to the podcast, I apologize.
Some say it was that like the combination of both of how good we fucking look. Danger. You could get pregnant just looking at that shit.
That's true.
And then finally, closing the album out, The Art of Shredding. That is such a fun, cocky way to close out on. But again, I gotta say that I remember playing that in just casually tuning up my guitar in college, and someone walked past the room, came in, and just looked at me like this, and then walked away. And I was like,
do you remember the feeling of how great it felt the first time you were ever to successfully chug and have the right guitar tone and everything to really do it? Ching, 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 ching. I remember that because when I first got a guitar, I didn't have a distortion pedal. I had gain on the amp, and then I got like some Ibanez metal distortion pedal. I don't remember what it was. But I just remember the first time I got the tone perfectly right, and I did like I was like, oh, and all I wanted to do was play the E, the palm muted E. Oh God, this is so good. It just felt so great at that moment. You can't take that away from a guitar player.
My big one was I wanted to, when I first started playing guitar, I just wanted to play all the really fast Metallica songs, and I was like, right, Whiplash and Fight Fire with Fire, I want to learn those riffs. And I remember just sitting there watching SpongeBob, just going trying to get up to speed, until in the end I realized, like, about a few months later, I was like doing the same exact thing, watching SpongeBob going, and then I realized, oh shit, I could do it. It's one of those beautiful moments, isn't it?
That's one of the things that I say to a lot of people, even older people that want to start playing guitar, but like, especially like with my daughter wants to play drums, which we're going to get to. But I tell her the same thing, where I go, if you want to get really good, the way that you start is you do one particular thing over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then build on with other things. But I just think that that's the thing. That's why learning an instrument when you're young is so much easier, because you have so much more time to watch SpongeBob and go, whereas you get older and you're like, I got to go pick up the kids and I got to go to my job. I don't have time. Give me an hour to learn. No, you don't need that. No, it's not going to work. It's not going to work that way. So,
yeah, I just, I find myself, high school was a hard time for me. I mean, the knee story kind of puts that in perspective. That was kind of like rock bottom. That was like the worst part. But
that totally sounds like it should be some sort of origin story where you become some sort of superhero, with a knee, some sort of knee thing. Whoever you are, hero or villain, it's your knee that has something to do with it. Bionic leg, so you can like jump really high or something. I don't know.
There was a point. Now I know, I said it kind of jokingly to someone, and I don't think they realized I was joking. Like, the worst kind of fucking person. They were like, I jokingly said, I wish they'd just lop the fucking thing off and give me like a Terminator leg, right? And at the time, they were saying, that's a really stupid thing to say. There's a lot of amputees in the world. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, you like, having a Terminator leg would be so cool. And on top of that, I didn't really amputate my fucking leg. So, learn to take a fucking joke, some of y'all.
Yeah.
Huh?
You see, that's not a very left wing sort of thing to say.
That was rather Trumpish of you, wasn't it, William?
If you're easily offended, don't listen to this show.
Yeah. Whoa, someone's triggered.
Where were we? Are you done with Cowboys? I mean, I feel like we can't say enough great things about Cowboys from Hell. It's just a fucking classic.
We'll be here all night. I got to rein myself in to some extent. I've said all the big things.
I really do think that Cowboys is an album that if somebody said, let's make a top 20 of the best metal albums ever made, but you're using the blanket term metal, you're not saying thrash or whatever, Cowboys from Hell has to go on that list.
It's in there.
It's one of the best. But to me, it didn't end up being my number one. My number one, Vulgar Display of Power from 1992, 30 years ago, came out 30 years ago. So I told you, like, last time when I heard this the first time, like, a friend of mine was like, listen to this album. And I was totally floored by it. But the reason why I loved it so much at the time was two things that I still love about the album now. Number one, it's really heavy, tons of fucking, face melting riffs on it and shit. Yeah. But also from first listen, you walk away from that album remembering things from it because it's catchy and memorable pretty much all the way through. There's something in every song that you go, oh, that part. And so that was a thing that I felt was so interesting about this album. It was almost like a Pantera greatest hits when they just put out this album and it was all the hits on this album. At the time I didn't know Cowboys from Hell. But the thing that I like about this one is it may not be as dynamic and as much of a journey as Cowboys from Hell is. It's more focused, but it's still just absolute banger after banger on this album. And I think that at the end of the day, I decided to put this one at number one because I feel like out of all of their albums, in the grand scheme of the music that you and I listen to and talk about, Vulgar Display of Power has had more of an influence over it than any other Pantera album, I would say.
Yeah.
I would say that every metal band that came out formed since Vulgar Display of Power has been influenced somehow by this album. I mean, even if it's just a little bit, there's some sort of influence that just carried on with metal. It's like they dropped the fucking pebble in the water or whatever, and then the ripple effect of Vulgar Display of Power is still going. It was a fucking boulder in the middle of the ocean or whatever, you know? And so that's why, because like, not only does it have the memorable classic tracks on it, but it's just, it's like I said, it's banger after banger. And so, I don't really need to break it down. I mean, it's got all we broke it down already. All of these fucking classic songs. just the I don't know what else to say about it. It's like, I feel like we talked about it so much that I'm just like, it is what it is. It's just like all sorts of memorable classic songs. And I would say that probably Walk might be the most, do you think that's the most famous Pantera song, or would it be Cowboys from Hell?
I think it's Walk. I think Walk is,
because even like my wife and my daughter are into Walk. It's a song that kind of transcends like different types of people and young people and stuff.
It was even, if you want to know, actually, here's, I got to credit my mum a little bit here. Walk, bearing in mind, she was an elementary school teacher.
Yeah.
Right? Or a teaching assistant, basically meaning she was doing a teacher's job for a fraction of the pay, because the school system is kind of a shit show. But I remember her ringtone was Walk, and it would go off sometimes in lessons, and it was like, it was just so funny that all these kids are thinking, what's that? All of a sudden, hello.
I really think as soon as you mentioned school, I'm all like, man, wouldn't it be so great if Walk was played at somebody's graduation? Because you're walking to get your diploma or whatever, and Walk is playing. I'm like, God, that's perfect.
Graduating.
There you go.
That'd be fucking good.
So yeah, I just really think everything about this album, from the iconic album art all the way down to those riffs that have just lived on as like things that are so awesome, but have still never been equaled in any way.
They're like sacred texts at this point. Like it's just like the Bible of groove.
Yeah. And this album became like, a little bit of the soundtrack to Headbangers Ball, because they would use parts of songs from this album on Headbangers Ball.
Yeah.
Which prior to that, the album that they used a lot from was
SOD.
No, well, they did in the beginning, they used that, but then it was Beg to Differ by Prong. So if you go and listen to Beg to Differ, like at least 4 or 5 tracks, you go, oh, that was on Headbangers Ball. Which is very similar, which is interesting that Prong is such a groove and heavy kind of band, hard to categorize kind of band. Same with Pantera. Eventually we'll get to Prong, obviously.
It just strikes me as so funny though, like when you look back on that era, you would have like all of these like really heavy like ident things pop up, and they were like really cool and gnarly, like Hi, I'm Ricky Rackman. This is Unskinny Bop by Poison.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay, come on, that riff rules.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is like, it's so funny, that era, it was like an era of complete extremes. It's like, it's like this is Rotted Rectal Cavity. Coming up next is another power ballad, and it's like, what a great time.
I think that's what made me the person that I am, though, is the fact that I grew up at a time where you would watch a television show that would play Poison, and then later on Morbid Angel would play later in the night. And so, and I enjoyed each of those things and still do today. And so that's probably why, because it was those formative years of my brain where all this stuff was new. Grunge was new. Thrash was fairly new, but it's like, it's all of that stuff in my brain just soaking it all in. And then it all equates to great music, to me. And Vulgar Display of Power fits into that. So that's my closing, because I don't know what else to say about it. I just think it's a great album, but it's tough with a band like Pantera, just because first you have 2 very distinct periods of the band. I guess we had that with Rush as well. But then on top of it, there's just so much quality to like so much that they did that sometimes it gets really difficult. You got to get real. For me, I had to get real picky and nitpicky to be just like, all right, well, this one I don't like this. But at the end of the day, I like all of these albums. Anyway, that brings us to this has been such a journey of an episode, an epic episode with like tons of tangents.
Yeah.
And but it wouldn't be appropriate if we didn't end it the way we normally do, which is we completed band discography, and here we go. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, we did it. Yeah. Feels good. So Peanut Butter Platypus, to those of you who stuck around this long, and especially in an episode like this where we had tangents that were not related to the same kind of music, tangents that were more of a social commentary, tangents that were a really brutal story about I almost called you by your name, Eddie's leg. Eddie, his name is Eddie.
The artist formerly known as Will.
But nobody in your real life calls you Eddie, so it's like
I called myself Eddie the other day, and I had like a crazy like oh my god,
it's going to become like Fight Club.
Yeah. Oh god. Yeah.
Yeah. In death, a member of Project Mayhem does have a name. His name was Will. No, his name was Robert Paulson. Anyway, sorry about that. So yes, Peanut Butter Platypus, you're all lovely and beautiful. We will be taking next week off. I can tell you that. But it's for a very important reason. Our good friend Eddie here I'm a little jealous because he's going to the Download Festival.
Yep, Download Festival. We
don't have festivals like that over in America. There's no such thing as a heavy music festival. It's really? No, there's not even a hard rock festival because there might be, but it's going to be, here's a festival where it's just REO Speedwagon and a handful of other bands that don't have the original members anymore. But like the big ones, the big festivals that I go, God, that would be fun. And I hate people, but I would go to a festival at least once to go to something like Download. So I'm a little jealous about that.
Yeah, I thought to myself, well, Kiss is there, Megadeth is there, and a bunch of other acts are there. And I thought, you know what, fuck it, let's do this. I mean, technically my girlfriend took care of the tickets. I paid her, but yeah, she was like, "You're going to Download." I went, "Hell yeah, let's fucking do this."
That's awesome. And you're going? Is it 3 days?
3 days, yeah. Yeah, we got a tent and everything.
So yeah, we'll be taking the week off, but then we'll be back with another band. Something we've never done before actually is what we're coming back to. So that'll be interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, so you'll be without an episode next week, but we've done so many episodes now. We're getting close to 100 episodes of Cranked and Ranked.
Really?
I think we have maybe like 20 or something more to go to get there. I haven't done the math because there's all the old head podcasts and then there's Cranked and Ranked, but I don't really remember the exact number.
I mean, I suppose we've been doing this for the most part weekly for 2 years.
2 years.
And there's 52 weeks in a year. So yeah, we got to be coming up on it.
Yeah. But yeah, go back and listen to some of the old ones, or if you're on YouTube, just scroll through and find some old ones.
I recently went back and listened to the first one, or like the first like bit of the first one.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. Like I hear myself talking now and I'm so comfortable. I'm so comfortable with you and in front of the microphone. Back then I was so nervous. I was like, I hope they like me. And now
they do.
Yeah.
I watch my
fights with people.
my first like at least like dozen or so YouTube videos. I'm just like, this is so boring. I guess it's like I didn't have enough energy or whatever, and so I got better. Yeah, I guess that happens. You get better at it.
That's like when I did that react video to the first ever video I made.
Yeah.
And I just sit there laughing and cringing at myself the entire
time. Are we
time.
coming up on a year? Because I told you should react to you reacting to the reaction the next year. So that's totally a video you should do.
Yeah. I'll probably be like, I need my hair layered again. I looked good there. Yeah.
All right. Well, we've kept you guys here long enough. I think we're approaching 2.5 hours for this episode, which is pretty epic. Awesome. But you know, some people have said they don't like it when we make shorter episodes. So this is for you, for all of you peanut butter platypuses that want things to be long-winded. You got it. So yeah, that's been our ranking for Pantera. Thank you very much for being here. And as usual, I'm going to throw it over to Mr. Eddie Sparxx to take us out.
Lay it down!